On August 22, 2022, at a primary care clinic in Indian River, Florida, a humorous and satirical event unfolded, turning a missed doctor's appointment into a police matter. The situation began when a woman, arriving late and being denied service, refused to leave the clinic. Despite being repeatedly told by the staff that the doctor could not see her, the woman insisted on sitting in the lobby, claiming her right to see the doctor as a sacred duty. This inexplicable determination forced the clinic to call the police, and thus began a heated debate between reason and obstinacy. In a comedy of errors that felt like a scene from a sitcom, one woman's quest for medical attention spiraled into a bizarre and unnecessary showdown with law enforcement. What began as a routine day at a primary care clinic transformed into an unforgettable episode, aptly titled, Law and Order, Primary Care Unit. Here's the tale of determination, entitlement, and a spectacular misunderstanding of the law. On the morning of August 22, 2022, at the primary care clinic in Indian River, Florida, staff were prepared for another day of appointments and consultations. But their sense of normalcy was shattered when she arrived, a woman brimming with indignation. Having missed her appointment, she entered the clinic with the confidence of someone who believed schedules and policies are mere suggestions. When informed that her doctor could not see her that day, the woman dismissed the staff's explanations as irrelevant. She proclaimed her intention to sit in the waiting room until the doctor personally addressed her concerns. Her defiance was less about seeking care and more about staging a one-woman protest against the tyranny of punctuality. The staff's patience were thin as the woman's demands grew louder. Her reasoning was simple. She had an appointment, albeit one she missed, and therefore, the doctor had no right to refuse her. Ignoring the staff's pleas, she declared herself a permanent fixture of the lobby, insisting that justice be served. When it became clear that words would not suffice, the clinic staff reluctantly called the police. The deputies arrived, hoping for a quick resolution, but they soon realized they were dealing with a unique challenge. As they calmly explained that her presence was now unauthorized, she launched into a tirade about her rights, asserting that no one could deny her access to the doctor. With remarkable patience, the deputies outlined the laws of trespassing. They explained that the clinic, as a private business, had every right to deny her service and request her departure. The woman, however, remained unmoved. Her rebuttal ranged from conspiracy theories about corruption to comparisons with public institutions, claiming that the clinic owed her service. The deputies, trying to defuse the situation, compared the clinic's rights to those of a restaurant. If a pizza place can refuse service, so can a private clinic, but the woman dismissed their analogies with a wave of her hand, declaring that this was different. She was entitled to see her doctor. As the discussion dragged on, the woman's persistence grew bolder. She accused the deputies and staff of colluding against her and declared she would call the feds to report their misconduct. She even suggested that she would take the matter straight to court, demanding names and badge numbers from everyone involved. Meanwhile, the clinic staff, watching the drama unfold, locked the doors for their safety. The woman, undeterred, continued to argue, now refusing to leave unless escorted by her doctor personally, a demand that was both impractical and impossible. Realizing the futility of further discussion, the deputies issued a formal trespass warning, signed by the doctor. The woman reluctantly accepted the notice, but not without a theatrical flourish. She claimed it was unconstitutional and continued to protest loudly, stating that the notice was an insult to her right to health care. Despite receiving the document, she remained in the lobby, alternating between demanding the doctor's presence and threatening to sue everyone in sight. Her refusal to leave prompted the deputies to give her one final warning. When she still refused to comply, the deputies had no choice but to arrest her for trespassing and resisting commands. The woman's reaction was as dramatic as one might expect. She flailed, accused the officers of abuse, and loudly declared their actions corrupt. As she was escorted to the patrol car, she continued to hurl accusations, vowing that everyone involved would face her wrath in court. With the woman removed from the premises, the clinic staff finally breathed a sigh of relief. The deputies, no strangers to conflict, reflected on the importance of staying calm in the face of such bizarre situations. The woman, now facing charges for trespassing and resisting arrest, left an indelible mark on everyone involved. Her determination to fight for a missed appointment showcased the curious blend of entitlement and misunderstanding that occasionally turns ordinary events into extraordinary tales. And somewhere, In the quiet of the clinic, the doctor likely whispered a silent prayer of thanks that this particular patient would no longer darken their door. It started as any other unremarkable day at the primary care clinic. Patients came and went, some clutching magazines, others scrolling on their phones, all dutifully following the rhythm of scheduled appointments. But the tranquil hum of the waiting room was shattered with the arrival of a woman whose air of self-importance could fill the room. She breezed through the doors, her heels clicking decisively against the tile floor as though she were entering a courtroom, not a clinic. Her expression carried the confidence of someone who believed the universe itself owed her a favor. Her arrival wasn't just an entrance, it was a proclamation. The clinic staff greeted her with their usual professionalism, but their smiles quickly faltered as she launched into her demands. The reality of her missed appointment had no bearing on her resolve. "I had an appointment," she declared, her voice laced with indignation, as if those few minutes of tardiness were a minor technicality the clinic should happily overlook. When informed that the doctor could not accommodate her, she met their explanation with a huff and an arched eyebrow. "What do you mean I can't see the doctor?" "I had an appointment," she punctuated her words with a pointed gesture at the reception desk, as though her mere presence should compel immediate action. The staff, well-versed in handling difficult situations, tried to de-escalate the brewing storm. They apologized, explained the clinic's policies, and even offered to help reschedule. But the woman was having none of it. "I'll wait," she announced, her tone resolute. She marched over to an empty chair in the lobby, plopped down, and folded her arms, daring anyone to challenge her. Her body language spoke volumes. She wasn't going anywhere. She crossed her legs, tapped her fingers against the armrest, and occasionally glanced at her watch, performing an exaggerated pantomime of impatience. Each passing second seemed to fuel her determination. She looked around the room, eyeing other patients as if expecting them to join her crusade. "Does the doctor know I'm here?" she asked, her voice echoing loudly enough for everyone to hear. When the staff reiterated that the doctor's schedule was full and that her missed slot couldn't be accommodated, she scoffed. "Ridiculous, I'm entitled to my appointment. It's your job to make it work." Her tone shifted from irritation to condescension as she lectured the staff on what she believed to be their obligations. She accused them of being inefficient and suggested that they learn customer service, all while refusing every reasonable solution they offer. The staff, exchanging wary glances, realized that logic wasn't going to work. This was no ordinary misunderstanding. This was a full-blown campaign of entitlement to standoff with no easy resolution. They calmly informed her that she would need to leave if she couldn't cooperate. Her response, "Call the doctor, I'm not leaving until they see me." And thus, the peaceful morning at the clinic was officially over, replaced by a drama that would soon escalate far beyond anyone's expectations. After an hour of circular arguments and the woman's immovable resolve, the clinic staff reached the logical conclusion: they needed backup. When kindness, patience, and every ounce of diplomacy failed, it was time to call in reinforcements. Two deputies arrived on the scene, their demeanor calm and professional, though their eyes betrayed the weary recognition of that kind of call. The kind where logic would play a minor role, if any. They approached the woman, who sat like a monarch holding court in the clinic lobby, arms crossed and chin tilted in defiance. "Ma'am," one of the deputies began with the careful tone reserved for handling emotional hand grenades, "we understand you're upset, but the doctor cannot see you today." She turned to them with an air of exaggerated shock, as though they'd just insulted her lineage. "I have a right to see my doctor," she exclaimed, punctuating her statement with a dramatic wave of her hand. The deputy tried again, explaining the situation with the patience of a kindergarten teacher. "Your appointment was missed. The clinic has policies, and they've asked you to leave. Refusing to do so constitutes trespassing." Her response was a masterclass in misplaced conviction. "This isn't trespassing, this is a violation of my rights. I pay taxes, I contribute to society." She pointed emphatically at the receptionist, accusing them of orchestrating a personal vendetta. The deputies exchanged a knowing glance, the universal language of professionals who've seen it all. They attempted to de-escalate, but her declarations grew louder. "I'm not leaving, you can't make me. I have an inalienable right to be here." It was at this point she invoked the Constitution, a bold move considering the apparent lack of amendments dedicated to guaranteeing doctor visits on demand. The deputies, ever patient, switched to a more explanatory approach, hoping to shed some light on the legalities. They clarified that the clinic, as a private business, had every right to refuse service, particularly to someone who refused to comply with their policies. They explained that once asked to leave, staying against the property owner's wishes was a direct violation of trespassing laws. The woman nodded as they spoke, not in agreement, but in that performative way that screamed, "I'm only waiting for my turn to talk." Sure enough, she responded with the confidence of a self-appointed constitutional scholar. "This is America," she declared, as though her sheer conviction would rewrite the law. "I have freedoms, and one of those is seeing my doctor when I need to." The deputies maintained their composure, though one subtly adjusted his stance, perhaps bracing for an inevitable rant. "Ma'am," the other deputy interjected, "we're not here to debate constitutional rights. This is about trespassing on private property. You need to leave, or there will be legal consequences." But consequences meant nothing to her. She crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair, her posture one of resolute defiance. "You can't intimidate me," she sneered. "I'll see you in court if you try." Unmoved by reason, law, or basic civility, the woman shifted her strategy from righteous indignation to wild accusations. She pointed at the receptionist. "Corruption, that's what this is. They don't want to help people, they only care about money." Her tirade soon extended to the deputies themselves. "And you're just as bad. You're siding with them because they pay you off." One of the deputies pinched the bridge of his nose, the universal gesture of someone regretting their career choices. "Ma'am, no one here is part of a conspiracy. You missed your appointment, that's all this is." But the woman was undeterred. She launched into a tirade about systemic corruption and abuse of power, peppering her speech with threats of lawsuits and promises to contact federal authorities. "I'll have your jobs for this," she declared with theatrical flair, pointing at the deputies as though delivering the final line of a courtroom drama. The deputies, unflinching, stood their ground. They issued clear warnings, each one falling on deaf ears. She waved them off dismissively, her focus entirely on her imagined victory over the injustice she was facing. With negotiations resembling a deadlock, the deputies moved to the next step, making things official. They produced a trespass notice, the bureaucratic equivalent of a restraining order for uninvited persistence. The document was straightforward. Her presence was no longer welcome, and any further attempts to re-enter the clinic would result in legal consequences. The clinic doctor, pulled away from more important matters like actual patient care, reluctantly signed the notice. One could almost see the weight of this bizarre ordeal etched on their face as they wondered whether this, too, would count toward their professional oath to do no harm. The deputies handed the notice to the woman with the solemnity of delivering a royal decree. She snatched it with the disdain of someone handed an overpriced parking ticket. Holding the paper at arm's length, she examined it as though it were written in hieroglyphics, muttering phrases like, "This is ridiculous," and "I'll have my lawyer look at this." Her expression betrayed a curious mix of indignation and disbelief, as though she couldn't fathom that her actions might warrant actual consequences. Still, she begrudgingly accepted the document, clutching it like a symbol of her continued martyrdom in the battle against perceived oppression. Even with the trespass notice in hand, the woman showed no signs of retreating. Instead, she escalated her performance, shifting tactics between legal threats and demands for accountability. She requested the names of every clinic staff member, every deputy present, and possibly the janitor for good measure, all while pacing the lobby like a trial lawyer preparing for opening arguments. Her voice rose with every passing minute, reaching a crescendo when she declared, "This is a free country." The phrase hung in the air, as though it were the ultimate mic drop rebuttal to the concept of private property rights. To her, freedom seemed synonymous with "no one can tell me no." Meanwhile, the clinic staff, clearly shaken but maintaining composure, quietly locked the doors for safety. The soft click of the locks was both a practical precaution and a metaphorical barrier against her unrelenting storm of entitlement. She noticed, of course, and shouted through the glass that locking the doors was an infringement on her rights. The deputies, now visibly tired of the circus, issued yet another warning. "Ma'am, if you do not leave immediately, you will be arrested for trespassing." "Good," she shot back, as though daring them to follow through. "I'll see you in court." The deputies exchanged another glance, this time less knowing and more resigned. It was clear they were dealing with someone for whom every logical option was a step toward further escalation. The scene had become a spectacle of contradictions, a woman passionately defending her rights by ignoring the legal boundaries of others, a clinic staff locked inside to escape a non-violent protest, and deputies caught between, enforcing the law and maintaining their sanity. After what felt like an eternity of warnings, explanations, and patience-testing antics, the deputies finally reached the end of their tolerance. In calm but firm tones, they informed the woman she was under arrest for trespassing and resisting lawful commands. This declaration was met with a kind of dramatic performance that would have earned her a standing ovation on any theater stage. She flailed her arms wildly, making the simple act of being handcuffed seem like a Herculean struggle. "This is an abuse of power," she cried, as if she were a character in a political thriller exposing a grand conspiracy. Her accusations shifted gears rapidly. One moment it was about the deputies being in cahoots with the clinic staff, and the next, they were part of a shadowy medical industrial complex designed to suppress her right to health care. "You're all corrupt," she bellowed, her voice echoing in the now empty clinic lobby. The deputies, their professionalism unshaken, simply guided her toward the patrol car with the quiet demeanor of individuals contemplating their life choices. One of them, perhaps privately, was calculating how many more years of service stood between then and retirement. Her physical resistance was equal parts ineffective and overly dramatic. She leaned back, forcing the deputies to gently but firmly nudge her forward. Every step toward the patrol car was accompanied by declarations of victimhood, ranging from "I'm being persecuted" to the oddly specific "you'll all lose your jobs for this." Once seated in the patrol car, the deputies shifted into procedural mode, explaining her rights and the legal basis for her arrest. "You have the right to remain silent," they began, though it was clear she had no intention of exercising that particular right. "I'm suing all of you," she interjected, her voice dripping with indignation. "And your department, and the clinic, and probably that vending machine in the lobby too." One of the deputies, perhaps out of habit, reassured her that everything had been recorded on body cameras, a statement that only fueled her outrage. "Oh, perfect, let the whole world see how you're trampling on my freedoms," she retorted, clearly unaware that the footage would likely show her shouting at staff, ignoring warnings, and resisting arrest with the zeal of someone auditioning for a courtroom drama. Meanwhile, the deputies maintained their professionalism, carefully detailing the charges she would face: trespassing, resisting lawful orders, and potentially disturbing the peace. Their calm explanations were met with rolling eyes, exaggerated sighs, and muttered threats of taking her case to the highest court in the land. As the patrol car pulled away, the clinic's staff peered cautiously from behind the locked doors, their faces a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The air in the lobby, once thick with tension, seemed to lighten as the woman's presence faded into the distance. The doctor, who had spent far too much of their day dealing with this debacle, retreated to their office, undoubtedly considering whether a career in veterinary medicine might involve fewer theatrics. The deputies, back in their vehicle, exchanged weary glances. "Think she's really going to sue the vending machine?" one of them joked, attempting to lighten the mood. "Honestly, I wouldn't put it past her," the other replied with a chuckle. As for the woman, her resolve was unshaken. Sitting in the backseat, she began plotting her next move, perhaps a viral social media post or a strongly worded letter to an ambiguous higher authority. Her imagination was limitless, fueled by her unyielding belief that she was the hero in a battle against systemic injustice. Somewhere in her mind, this wasn't the end but the beginning of her fight. Meanwhile, for everyone else involved, it was a day they'd soon hope to forget, though it might resurface at holiday parties as the tale of that time they met the world's most determined complainer. The incident at the clinic that day concluded with peace restored, but its echoes linger as a valuable lesson. The woman, with her puzzling persistence, turned a missed appointment into an afternoon-long spectacle, a clear testament to how attitudes and actions can shape or shatter the way others perceive us. For the staff and law enforcement, it served as a lesson in patience and handling situations with professionalism, even when faced with obstinance. For anyone who witnessed it, the event was a reminder that personal rights should never override shared rules and principles. More importantly, this story is a cautionary tale about communication and behavior in society. If we don't listen or show respect, stubbornness only leads to negative outcomes. In life, it's essential to accept that things won't always go our way. Knowing how to act appropriately not only helps avoid trouble, but also demonstrates maturity and earns respect. Ultimately, perhaps the greatest takeaway is this: a bit of humility, a bit of patience, and knowing when to step back are the keys to maintaining peace in any situation. After all, a missed doctor's appointment is hardly worth making oneself the main character in someone else's long day.